He didn't slam the door. He didn't throw anything across the room. He simply sat down, placed both hands flat on the table, and stared at the wall for a long moment before anyone dared to speak. That image, Dave Roberts, silent, suspended, fined, said more than any post-game speech ever could. This wasn't just a 2-game suspension. This wasn't just a fine. This was a statement from Major League Baseball that even the man managing the most talked-about player on the planet is not above the rules. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, Shohei Ohtani opened his mouth and said something that nobody in that room was prepared to hear. The air in the building changed the moment those words left his lips. To understand what happened after the Dbacks game, you have to go back to the moment it all began to unravel. Not at the final out. Not at the press conference. It started in the middle of the game, in a moment so brief that most people watching from the stands didn't even register what they were seeing. The Arizona Diamondbacks had come into this game with something to prove. They weren't just playing for a win. They were playing for respect. A team that had been quietly building momentum all season, a team that had watched the Dodgers command every headline, every conversation, every highlight reel, they were ready. And for a while, it looked like they might actually do it. But the Dodgers were the Dodgers. And the Dodgers had Shohei Ohtani. He had been locked in from the first pitch. The kind of locked in that makes opposing pitchers shake their heads before they even wind up. The kind of locked in that makes managers call time not because they need to talk strategy, but simply because they need their pitcher to breathe. His eyes at the plate had that look. Anyone who has watched enough baseball knows that look. It is the look of a man who has already decided what is about to happen before the ball even leaves the pitcher's hand. The Dbacks knew it too. Their dugout knew it. Their pitching staff knew it. And Dave Roberts knew exactly how to use it. The sequence of events that led to the suspension did not begin with a dirty play. It did not begin with a shouting match or a shove or a thrown helmet. It began with a decision. A managerial decision that Roberts made in the late innings of a game that was already tense enough without adding fuel to the fire. What he did was entirely within the rules. That part was never in dispute. But Major League Baseball has never been only about what is within the rules. It has always been about something harder to define. The spirit of the game. The temperature of the moment. The responsibility of the men in the dugout to keep 9 innings from becoming something uglier than baseball. Roberts crossed that line. Not with his fists. Not with his words to the umpires. With the decision he made in that dugout, in that inning, at that moment, a decision that the league looked at the following morning and decided deserved consequences. 2 games. 20% of his salary. For Roberts, the fine stung. The suspension stung more. Not because it hurt his pride, though it did, but because of the timing. The Dodgers were in the middle of a stretch that demanded his presence. Every game mattered. Every lineup card, every pitching change, every in-game adjustment, these were moments that required him in the dugout, not watching from somewhere else. And yet, there he was. Suspended. The press conference room was quieter than usual that evening. Reporters filed in slowly. The atmosphere carried the kind of weight that descends on a room when everyone already knows the story but nobody is quite sure how the man at the center of it is going to respond to it. Roberts entered without fanfare. He sat down. He adjusted the microphone. He looked up. His expression was not anger. It was something more complicated than anger. It was the expression of a man who had processed what happened, accepted the consequences, and was now trying to figure out how to explain something that he wasn't entirely sure he could explain simply. A reporter opened immediately. No warm-up question. No easing into it. Dave, MLB handed down a 2-game suspension and a significant fine. What's your reaction? Roberts exhaled slowly. Not dramatically. Just the way a man exhales when he has been sitting with a heavy thought for several hours and has finally been asked to put it into words. I respect the league's decision, he said. His voice was even. Controlled. "What I can tell you is that everything I did because I believed it was right for this team in that moment. Did I handle every second of it perfectly? No. I never claimed to." He paused. "But I'll serve the suspension, I'll pay the fine, and I'll be back." The room didn't erupt. Nobody clapped. The reporters just kept writing. Because what Roberts said next was where the press conference truly began. Someone toward the back of the room asked about Ohtani. It was a simple enough question on the surface. How did Ohtani respond to what happened? What did he say in the clubhouse afterward? Roberts shifted slightly in his seat. He glanced down at the table for just a moment. Then he looked back up. "You'd have to ask Shohei that," he said. And that was when everyone in that room remembered, Shohei Ohtani had already spoken. Earlier that evening, before the formal press conference had even begun, Ohtani had made his way to a small group of reporters near the clubhouse entrance. It was not a scheduled availability. It was not a media obligation. He had sought them out. That alone was enough to make people pay attention. Ohtani does not speak often. When he does, it tends to mean something. He stood there in his undershirt, his face still carrying the intensity of a man who had not yet fully come down from the game. He spoke through his interpreter, but his eyes made it clear that the words were coming entirely from him. Nobody had scripted this. Nobody had prepared a statement. This was Shohei Ohtani saying exactly what he meant to say. What he said stopped the reporters cold. He said that what happened on that field was not just about one game. He said that what the Dodgers carry into every game is a standard that goes beyond wins and losses. And then he said something that nobody expected from a man who has always let his performance speak louder than his words. He said the league needed to take a harder look at how these situations are handled. Not because of the suspension. Not because of the fine. But because of what the moment revealed about the pressure that builds inside a season, inside a team, inside a dugout, and what happens when that pressure finds no other way out except through the actions of the man in charge. The reporters were quiet for a moment after he finished. One of them asked him to clarify. Was he defending Roberts? Ohtani didn't hesitate. "I'm not defending a decision," he said. "I'm defending a person who gave everything for this team tonight." There's a difference. Inside the Dodgers clubhouse, the mood was complicated. Players who had been through suspensions and fines before understood the machinery of it. It happens. You accept it. You move forward. But this felt different. Because Roberts wasn't suspended for losing his temper over a personal slight. He wasn't suspended because something inside him snapped under the weight of a bad game. He was suspended for fighting. Fighting for his team in the only language the moment seemed to understand. Whether that was right or wrong was a conversation the league had already ended by the time the suspension was announced. But inside that clubhouse, the conversation was still going. A veteran player, speaking without wanting to be named, said something simple that managed to capture what everyone else was struggling to put into words. Skip went out there because he felt like he had to. You can disagree with how he did it. But you can't question why. What makes this moment heavier than a standard disciplinary ruling is the context surrounding it. The Dodgers are not a team that can afford distraction. Not with the schedule they carry. Not with the expectations pressed against them from every direction. And not with Shohei Ohtani at the center of everything they do. Every game Ohtani plays carries the weight of a story bigger than baseball. Every at-bat, every pitch, every moment he steps onto that field is watched by millions of people who are not simply watching the Dodgers. They are watching him. And the people responsible for managing that, for building a team around that kind of singular presence, carry a pressure that most people watching from the outside cannot fully comprehend. Roberts carries that pressure every single day. On the night of the Dbacks game, that pressure expressed itself in a way that cost him 2 games and 20% of his salary. Major League Baseball looked at what happened and decided consequences were necessary. Roberts accepted those consequences without drama. But Ohtani's words lingered in the room long after the press conference ended. Long after the reporters packed up their equipment and filed their stories. Long after the clubhouse went quiet. He said there's a difference between defending a decision and defending a person. It sounds simple. But in a moment like this, in a season like this, with everything that surrounds this team and this name and this player, it is the most complicated sentence in baseball right now. Dave Roberts will serve his suspension. The fine will be paid. The league will move on to the next controversy and the next headline and the next moment that demands its attention. But what happened after that Dbacks game will not be so easy to file away. Because somewhere between the benches clearing and the suspension being handed down and Shohei Ohtani standing outside a clubhouse saying things he didn't have to say, something was revealed about this team that no box score will ever fully capture. They fight for each other. Even when it costs them. Even when the rules say the price is 2 games and 20%. And on the mound, in the batter's box, in the quiet moments before a game begins, Ohtani already knew that. He has always known that. He just decided, on this particular night, that the rest of the world deserved to know it too.